This is the story of two dogs, Togo and Balto. Together they carried the weight of an entire town's survival on their backs. In January 1925, the remote town of Nome, Alaska, sat locked under deep snow and brutal winds. Winter was nothing new here, but what crept through its streets was different. Diphtheria, a serious infection of nose and throat. It stole into homes quietly, tightening its grip around children's throats, leaving families desperate and afraid. The only cure, the antitoxin serum, lay hundreds of miles away in Anchorage. Planes couldn't fly through the storms. Ships were frozen in the ice. The only hope left was to send it by dog sled across nearly 700 miles of wilderness. And so began the Great Race of Mercy, a desperate relay against time and nature itself. At the heart of it all were two huskies, Togo and Balto, two very different dogs united by a single purpose, to carry hope through the storm. The plan was simple on paper. 20 mushers, each running a leg of the trail, passing the serum like a burning torch. In truth, it was madness. 6 days through forests, rivers, mountains, and storms that could erase a man in minutes. The serum itself was fragile. Glass vials wrapped in insulation, easily shattered or frozen. When the train reached Nenana, Musher William Shannon lashed the parcel to his sled. His dogs barked, their breath steaming in the moonlight. Shannon glanced at the sky. Clouds stacked heavy, thick with snow. He whispered to his team, "Hup." The runners bit into the trail, and with that, the race began. Behind him stretched the relay, men and dogs who didn't yet know they were running into history. At the far end, in Nome, parents sat awake all night, listening to the shallow breaths of their children. Years earlier, Togo had been dismissed before his story even began. Small, frail, the runt of Leonhard Seppala's litter, hardly worth the meat he ate, some said. Seppala gave him away, sure the pup wouldn't survive a working life. But Togo had no intention of being forgotten. At 6 months, he leapt through a window and ran back across town, finding Seppala's kennels on sheer instinct. When Seppala harnessed his other dogs, Togo threw himself against the gate, howling. Finally, just to quiet him, Seppala tied him into the team. The result stunned him. That scrap of a dog pulled like thunder, charging forward with the mind of a leader. Over the years, Togo grew into Seppala's shadow, his closest companion, his surest guide. And though by 1925 he was 12 years old, with scars on his paws and frost whitening his muzzle, Seppala trusted no dog more. Balto was different. Dark-coated, broad-shouldered, he was part of Seppala's breeding program but ended up with Gunner Cosson. Balto was strong, dependable, but plain. He lacked the spark others saw in lead dogs. Cosson often kept him in the middle of the team, a worker, not a thinker. Although Cason once tested Balto at lead, the dog pulled steadily, but Cason shook his head. He's too slow to command, better as muscle. From then on, Balto was the dog no one noticed. Yet Balto carried something no one measured, quiet resolve. Where flashy dogs tired, Balto pressed on. Where others lunged recklessly, he held steady. In storms, when Cosson cursed the sky, Balto just lowered his head and pulled. No brilliance, just grit. Fate had reserved a final exam for him, one that would silence every doubt. When the relay was mapped, assignments seemed obvious. Seppala, the veteran, would take the deadliest leg across Norton Sound. His lead dog would be Togo. No one else had the instinct for ice and storm. Cosson was placed closer to Nome, a safer stretch. His job was important but not heroic. Yet, as the relay unfolded, storms shredded the schedule. Mushers were trapped, checkpoints emptied. By sheer chance, Cossin found himself forced to carry the serum farther than planned. Cossin once laughed with fellow mushers about Balto. "He's no Togo, but he'll get me there." Now, as he looked down at the black husky straining at the line, he realized the weight of destiny had shifted. The run into Nome would be his and Balto's. William Shannon's team lunged from Nenana into the first night. The storm clawed at him immediately, snow slicing like knives. His dogs panted hard, tongues lolling, paws pounding ice. Shannon's own flesh began to freeze. By the time he reached his handoff, his face was black with frostbite. He collapsed, barely able to speak. "The serum. Take it." Each musher after him faced the same devil: blinding snow, brittle ice, howling wind. Each whispered to their dogs as though to children, "Steady, pull, don't quit now." And in Nome, the coughing grew worse. When Sepala received the serum, the storm was at its peak. The world vanished into white. Wind screamed at 80 miles an hour, tearing breath from his lungs. He pulled his hood tight, eyes watering. He remembered Togo as a pup, stubbornly leading his first team, ignoring commands, yet somehow finding the safest path through a snow squall. "You see what I can't," Sepala had whispered back then. Now, as the storm swallowed them whole, he said the same again. At 12 years old, Togo dug into the snow, muscles rippling. He did not hesitate. Even when the trail disappeared, he pressed forward, nose to the wind, leading them into the storm's belly. Norton Sound was death disguised as ice. It stretched for miles, a frozen bay where the sea groaned beneath thin crusts. One crack, and dog and man alike would vanish into black water. Sepala trusted no dog but Togo. As they crossed in darkness, the ice boomed beneath them. Cracks spidered. The sled jolted. The dogs whined in terror, but Togo yanked them forward, eyes fixed on a horizon no one else could see. By dawn, Sepala looked back, and his blood ran cold. Behind them, the trail had split into open water. They had crossed just in time. Togo had led them over an ocean that was vanishing beneath their feet. By the time Sepala delivered the serum onward, he and Togo had run over 260 miles, 10 times the distance of most teams. Togo's paws bled, his chest heaved, but his eyes still burned with that same fire. Sepala remembered the day he'd first thought of giving Togo away, dismissing him as too weak. Now he knelt beside the old dog, voice breaking. "You saved them all, old boy." Togo had given his youth, his strength, his very body to this trail. He would never run again, but he had already etched his story into eternity. When the serum reached Gunnar Cossin, the storm was blinding. He was supposed to run just 50 miles. But when he arrived at the next checkpoint, the musher there refused to leave shelter. "It's suicide," he said. "No man can go out in this." Cossin looked at the serum, then at his team, then at Balto, standing steady in harness, snow plastered to his dark fur. "All right, boy," Cossin muttered. "It's on us." He remembered the time he doubted Balto's brains, calling him too ordinary for lead. Now, in the face of the storm, he had no choice but to trust him completely. The blizzard swallowed everything. Cossin couldn't see his hand in front of his face. He hunched low, blind, clinging to the sled. Only Balto could lead now. Snow stung his eyes, his fur froze stiff, but he pushed on, ears pricked, nose working the buried trail. For hours, Cossin could do nothing but whisper, "Good boy, keep going." Balto never faltered. Each step was a heartbeat against silence, each mile a defiance of death itself. Disaster struck at the Topcock River. The ice cracked, dogs plunged into freezing water. Kassen's gloves froze as he hauled them out, hands raw, bloodied. Terror pressed in. Balto anchored the line, bracing, refusing to let the sled slip. His body shook, but his stance never wavered. With his strength holding them, Kassen dragged each dog back. The serum, miraculously, stayed secure. They pressed on, storm still raging. For 20 hours, Balto drove the team. Kassen's eyelashes froze shut. His body sagged, nearly insensible. He was no longer guiding the sled, the dog was. Kassen thought of Balto as a pup, ungainly but eager, always pulling hardest even when others slackened. He had dismissed it then. Now he realized it had always been there, that quiet determination. Balto wasn't brilliant. He was relentless, and that was enough. At 5:30 a.m. on February 2nd, a shadow emerged from the storm. Balto trotted into Nome, chest heaving, legs trembling, fur caked in ice. Behind him, in the sled, the serum lay safe. Kassen staggered forward and handed it to Dr. Welch. Nome had been given back its future. The town erupted with emotion. Parents wept. Children began to recover as the serum worked its cure. The quarantine lifted. Across the nation, newspapers carried the story. Balto was hailed as a hero, the dog who defied the storm to save a town. Statues would rise in his honor. Songs would be written. Across America, his name became a legend. Yet in Alaska, among mushers, there was another truth. Togo had run farther, faced greater dangers, and carried the serum through the deadliest stretch. To Sapala, Togo was the undisputed champion. He called him the greatest dog that ever traveled the Alaskan Trail. While the world celebrated Balto, Sapala cradled Togo with quiet pride, knowing his old friend's courage had made everything possible. Nearly a century later, the great race of mercy is still told. It is not just a tale of men and medicine, but of dogs who gave everything. Togo, the wise old leader who conquered Norton Sound. Balto, the underestimated husky who delivered salvation into Nome. Together, they showed that courage comes in many forms, sometimes loud and celebrated, sometimes quiet and overlooked. In the frozen silence of Alaska, two dogs raced against time itself and won.